All of you jealous, ugly can kiss my fabulous, very perky black. Yes, William, today you're one of those.
Okay, so you all request and I shall provide, because I am a woman who is serious about her business affairs. But all jokes aside, for those who aren't familiar with that clip and the character in that clip, that is the iconic Toni Childs from the hit, the trailblazing series Girlfriends. Grew up watching this with my mother, my sister. This was a pillar in our family, especially because I have like a strong matriarch. I grew up just always around women, powerful women, strong women, trailblazing women. And this was the topic of discussion across the board, whether it be my mom's house, my aunt's house, their friend's house. Girlfriends was it. But today, I want to talk in this video, due to popular demand, I want to talk about Toni Childs and Joan's dynamic in the show Girlfriends. So for those who aren't familiar with the two characters, Toni was mainly known for, being, I guess, for lack of better words, relatively superficial, very high maintenance into her appearance. And when she would date, it would be very strategic as far as who she was dating. It would be someone of a particular caliber. She was definitely into the appearance and honestly the finer things in life. While Joan, she was very accomplished. She was very, I would say she was very profession-centered, very career-driven, very goal-oriented. But the interesting thing about Joan and Toni's dynamic is Joan almost acted as like the voice of reason, or at least that's how she was portrayed in the series, versus Toni was the firecracker. She was the person who would speak her mind, very bold, very confident, and didn't really care much about what other people thought. And she stood firm on her square. But despite friendships often having a complementary component to it, where we befriend people who either have different viewpoints as we do, who come from different backgrounds as we do, who may possess something that we feel like we lack, and we associate ourselves with these individuals because we feel like it's going to sharpen our tools in our toolbox. I actually want to present this dynamic as a cautionary tale. A cautionary tale of befriending people who we feel like possess things that we personally lack, because oftentimes it leads to us harboring feelings of jealousy and or envy, and that was prevalent within Joan in respects to her dynamic with Toni. So without further ado, we're going to hop right in. So before hopping into the dynamic, I want to dissect Toni's character a little bit more. And I know I dissected it a little bit earlier, talking about, her high maintenance component, also her kind of being superficial, upper echelon. She was into the glitz and the glamour of it all. But one thing that stood out to me as I was going back and I was assessing certain clips from the show Girlfriends is that Toni's superpower, so to speak, her strength when it comes to, their friendship and their dynamic, was romance. Love came easy for Toni. Romantic opportunities came easy for Toni. And even though her approach to it seemed superficial, the reason why she was so superficial about it and she was almost like dismissive about it and almost transactional is because it was something that was almost a given in her life. And to provide a little bit more context as far as that superficial component, I feel like Toni's character could be best described by reading the section, or rather the envious archetype listed in the book titled The Spoiled Brat. The spoiled brat is an envious individual who will only be made apparent when they cannot use you or get what they want from their target. So even though most of us can recollect moments where Joan was displaying signs of jealousy and envy towards Toni, I also have to provide this background, because even though she may have been oblivious to the fact that certain things that she said, and I'm speaking of Toni at this point, certain things that she may have said and done may have been dismissive or even selfish when it came to other people around her, it still doesn't negate the fact that it had negative consequences, even if her intentions weren't necessarily rooted in malice. And an example of this is when Toni decided to date one of Joan's exes, or at least someone who Joan was entertaining romantically at a point in time, and actually didn't tell her. And it took Lynn, their other friend in the group, to force pretty much Toni to get on the phone with Joan and give her a heads up that that's who she was going to be bringing to the gathering. So even though Toni's argument was, oh, well, Joan had so many negative things to say about him, she won't care. She wasn't interested in him anyways. It's not a big deal. It was still her displaying insensitivity and inconsideration. But both of these things are a no-go when we talk about our friendships, especially our really, really close, intimate friend groups. So this is a prime example of Toni almost fueling the jealous and envy fire that Joan secretly harbored to.
Hey Jay, happy birthday. Toni wants to talk to you.
Happy birthday, girl. Okay, all right. You know toe-sucking Charles, that guy you dumped? Well, he's my date for the party tonight.
It's important to note that circumstance between Toni and Joan's ex or situationship, whatever, because situations like this often lead to rifts in friendships. Even if your friend is saying, no, it's fine, I don't care, they care. And it is your responsibility to read the room. Now, I had to provide that background because I have to be fair. Even though many may argue that that situation with Toni, it might not have been completely wrong, some may argue that it is wrong, it's important to dissect it because it definitely is a factor. It's a factor in the rift in their friendship. Now, let's go ahead and dive into our Joan analysis. Joan's role was to be the voice of reason, the established one, the person who had it together, the person who had their head on straight in the friendship, accomplished, also very by the book, almost traditional in a sense, even with the example that I just now gave with her situationship, Charles, and how she stated that, she was looking for marriage and Charles was honest with her, which is beautiful, that's not something that he was looking for. So he was like, yeah, we can go ahead and call this quits now. Now, the thing about Joan, where she dropped the ball and where I would argue she ended up dropping the ball most in the friendship, at least in her dynamic with Toni, is Joan didn't understand the role that she played and really just sitting confidently in that role, just playing her part. Even with the situation with Charles, right? Even though I can't necessarily say I endorse this, but it's clear that Toni was superficial. She wasn't interested in taking him serious. And also, too, Charles clearly wasn't looking for anything serious. He was just having fun. They were more of a fit for one another versus Joan was looking for something more traditional, more serious. So it was almost a mismatched situation. It wasn't really a need to hold a vendetta or feel vindictive towards Toni if we break it down and we make it plain. Now, was it a crack in the girl code? Absolutely. I agree with that 110%. But when we think about what Joan brings to the table and what she puts a lot of her effort into as far as her image and her values, it was a mismatch. So it wasn't really a need to harbor any malice after that situation was said and done. But I'd argue the real reason Joan often harbored ill will towards Toni is because that moral stance that she often had in her values and her achievements, she viewed it as an opportunity to look down on Toni. And when she realized that Toni would make strides, especially in the romantic department, it would make her feel inadequate and inferior. And it would frustrate her because in her mind, she was better than Toni. And that's often why she would play that role of being the voice of reason in the friend group and the one who had it together. And she would put so much effort into the appearances of things because she liked the power that came with being the friend in the friend group who seemingly just had everything going for them and had their head on straight, all of their ducks in a row, no cracks in her foundation. But one thing that she did struggle with was love and romance, and that was a trigger for her, especially when she was around Toni, because that was something that clearly came effortlessly for Toni.
Buttercream and the hazelnut ganache.
Lynn, you can't keep getting back in line. This is a tasting, not an all-you-can-eat buffet. Okay? So save some for the other folks. Everybody's got a vote. Joan, come on, try the chocolate chestnut with cognac, girl. You know Fresno folks like the yak.
Oh my God, I forgot my towels in the dryer. I don't want them to wrinkle. I'll be right back.
Girl, you better get back here and eat this cake.
No, 2 minutes. It'll be 2 minutes, Toni.
Toni, I'm gonna say this to you one more time, okay? Costco sheet cake, all right? Ordered on Tuesday, get it on Wednesday. Oh, no, they'll write anything you want. English, Espanol, Korean. Oh, this better be somebody with a damn gift.
See? Nobody brought a gift, and she looks foolish.
This is my party. Toni Charles cannot have any drama today. unless you brought a gift.
That's right. It's your cake parties today. I'm sorry, Toni. With all that's been going on, I forgot.
So is that a no on the gift?
Yes.
Bye-bye.
I'll come back later.
You do that.
No. Tony, I asked him to come.
Oh, girl. Why didn't you tell me you guys made up? I was about to kick him out.
Well, we didn't.
Well, then he gotta go.
No, I need him to get his stuff.
Now?
She's right, Joan. Now is maybe not a good time.
No, Ellis, come on. You're about to do a movie and be on location for 2 weeks. Come and get your stuff.
I'm shooting in Burbank.
Just come and get your stuff.
So in that clip, that was Toni having a cake party, I believe, which was in preparation for her wedding. And what Joan did is she pretty much was being standoffish, but she strategically called her ex or someone who she was on the outs with and invited him over to pick up his things. And as we could see in the latter half of that clip, even the ex was like, oh, wait, you're right, Toni, this is not an appropriate time. I could come back later. But Joan insisted on him coming into the party and making it all about getting his belongings and X, Y, and Z. Now, the reason why she did this is because she wanted to take the attention off of Toni. Now, some people may ask, well, if you're harboring feelings of jealousy or envy towards a friend who is getting a promotion, who is getting married, engaged, etc., or taking a vacation, they just got a raise and now they're going to go to an elaborate getaway or resort, why would you include yourself in that process if you know it's going to ignite those uncomfortable feelings? Well, a lot of the time, people who harbor feelings of jealousy and envy will include themselves with the sole purpose of sabotaging that big day or that big event, to take the attention off of the person that they're jealous and envious of and shift it back onto them. And this clip was a prime example of that. Now, this dynamic is also listed in the book in the section, The Contingent Companion. And it states, this is the envious person whose association with you is contingent upon their superiority and your inferiority. Now, this quote-unquote friend will pose no threat as long as you never aspire for more in life. But in actuality, this companion is a walking liability. No one can guarantee they will never advance or improve in any area of their life, even if by accident. This is the envious person who will go to great lengths to regain their comfortable position. So furthermore, Joan fits the contingent companion archetype to the T. And the emphasis of envy that was prevalent within Joan in respects to Toni was romance. And I'm actually going to show a few other clips where Joan actually attempted to sabotage Toni's romantic efforts on different occasions.
I got a free robe to pack. Listen.
Greg didn't break up with you for no reason. I slipped up. And I told him that you were going to marry Clay before you had a chance to talk to him. Remember, that's what you said you were going to do. It was just a classic breakdown in communication. Now do you see why you can't marry Terrell? No! I, for one, feel so much better if that's all out in the open.
So as we could see in that clip, this was a completely different love interest from Charles, which at least Joan had a leg to stand on as far as sabotaging any romantic efforts. But this is a completely different prospect who Joan has no romantic ties to. And it goes to show that relentless nature that I often talk about on my page when it comes to envy and dealing with envious people. Joan did not want to see Toni prosper at all romantically, and it's because it was a trigger for her seeing Toni make strides in the romantic department, while that was something that she felt like she struggled with. So she was always going to be uneasy when it came to Toni and her romantic love interest at the time, her relationships, and her hand was always going to be in the pot as far as making sure that whatever Toni was building romantically was torn down in due time.
Hey. Sorry I missed the sunrise tea. Sorry I missed the 8 a.m. pedicure, but I'm here. Toni, you can give me the polish and I'll do it myself. Okay?
I thought this wedding would be difficult for Joan. I mean, any wedding is difficult for Joan, but then I thought, she might be a little jealous of me right now, but she'll get over it because Joan is my best friend. She's generous and able to put aside her feelings for one weekend because Joan is my best friend. But my best friend is not happy for me. She doesn't wish me well in my marriage.
I do, Toni. It's just that Ellis...
I don't care about Ellis. And to be honest, I really don't care about you right now. Today, I just want the luxury of thinking about me and my feelings. Confessing to my best friend that I'm nervous about getting married. Wondering if I'm about to ruin this man's life.
Toni, come on. Sweetie, you're doing the right thing. And I'm sorry, but I'm here for you. I'm here now.
Too late.
What?
Let me make this easy for you. Since you're not happy about this day, you don't have to be a part of it.
Toni, don't get overly dramatic.
I'm not getting dramatic, Joan. I'm getting married. And you're not invited, so get out.
So what's important to note about that clip that I just showed, which was pretty much a continuation of Toni's wedding, is pay attention to how Joan's desperate attempt to weasel herself back into the wedding on her terms, it had less to do with really feeling remorse for how she pretty much was making the process so difficult for Toni, even though Toni expressed like, you're making this all about the pros, but I'm nervous and I'm going through things right now and I need your support. Joan was reiterating all the times that she wasn't present. Oh, I'm sorry I missed this. I'm sorry I missed that. So she was still shifting the dynamics to where the attention was on her. And it was almost a desperate attempt to power trip. I'm still important. And it was a way of her asserting herself as far as, well, yeah, I'm making it inconvenient for you by not showing up when I said I was going to show up, or not being there and being inconsistent as far as my attendance because I want the attention to be on me. Where's Joan? Why is she missing? So you have to pay attention to the sly things, the slick things that envious people do. So in my assessment, the friction that was prevalent in Toni and Joan's dynamic was really rooted in Joan not having a clear understanding and a stable sense of confidence in what her contributing factors were to the world, to the friendship, and to all other facets of life. While Toni, on the other hand, is the embodiment of knowing exactly what it is that you bring to the table and also being confident in what you don't bring to the table and not caring, putting all of your eggs in the basket and most of your attention in your strengths and in those positive attributes and maximizing that potential. So both women brought equal value to the friendship in different ways. However, the case of Joan and Toni is a cautionary tale of how complementary companionship will only work as long as all parties bring a stable sense of self-esteem and confidence to the friendship. As long as there is one person, at least one outlier, who harbors feelings of insecurity, inadequacy, but most importantly, jealousy and envy towards their friend or friends, the friendship is always going to hit a roadblock. Now, these issues could have been repaired, in my opinion, easily repaired even, as long as Joan was willing to own up to her insecurities and face it head on. But oftentimes, Joan had a tendency of masking her insecurities, and that's where you would see her go in full throttle with, her trying to be the voice of reason or, looking down on all of her other friends' situations, especially Toni's situations, and always interjecting herself and trying to act as if she was coming with these solutions that were rooted in sound judgment. But it was really a way of her evading accountability and responsibility for the fact that, yeah, I'm feeling jealous right now. So in sum, reflecting on this dynamic, it makes me think about how important it is not for us to just stay in our lane, but to learn our lane and appreciate it. The thing about Joan is, even though she harbored a lot of envy towards Toni, and she tried to mask it as if she was more, reasonable or had better judgment than Toni, she did feel some kind of way that Toni was always breaking romantic barriers. Love, didn't seem to be a struggle for Toni versus her on the flip side. It did seem to be a struggle, but Joan didn't understand the fact that that was simply a byproduct of the life that she was living at the time. Joan was super successful in her respective field, and it's because she put her career at the forefront, versus Toni, on the other hand, put love at the forefront. So what they were really both seeing in their lives were tangible results of the intentions they were sowing. And Toni was able to accept this and embrace this because she was leading with self-assuredness, versus Joan was leading with enmeshment. And that was Joan's biggest roadblock, is she would oftentimes lead with enmeshment in her relationships and friendships. I realized that Joan didn't only lead with a superiority complex in her friendships, but also her relationships. And I think that's why she often experienced a lot of friction romantically. It's because she didn't learn how to just embrace the fact that, oh, wait, I don't always have to be superior. And even though this is a valid thing to extend grace for, especially in a friendship, it's also important to extend that grace to yourself if you realize that you're being patient with your friend, which I think Toni was patient with Joan. And that was the difference. Even though, Toni was kind of noted for being pretty selfish and superficial, she was actually really patient with Joan. And I feel like she didn't really struggle in the friendship and loyalty department, with the exception of Charles. But Joan, on the other hand, struggled in that capacity, and it often led to her sabotaging Toni. So if you find yourself in that predicament, it's okay for you to set boundaries with your friend. I do believe that loyalty, respect, and even patience, consideration is a given in your friendships. But we're also not obligated to subject ourselves to, any sabotage tactics that a friend may be throwing our way because they have yet to address the jealous and envious intentions that they harbor towards us. So if they can't do that self-work, it's not our responsibility to sit around and be their punching bag to avoid the work that they need to do inwardly. Okay, babes, that is all that I have for this video and my deep dive into the dynamic between Joan and Toni. I hope you guys enjoy this. And of course, feel free to share your opinions, your analyses, and even your personal experiences, whether you can relate to Joan and or Toni, in the comments section. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I look forward to speaking to you guys in the next one. Take care.